Today on our 2017 Ford Transit T150, you're going to be taking a look at, I'm going to show you how to install the MaxxFan Deluxe Roof Vent with 12-volt fan and thermostat. This is what our MaxxAir fan looks like when it's installed. This is going to be a manual open fan. This knob here, this is going to open and close your vent cover. And you push it to lock it. Our fan can operate with our vent lid closed or open. We're going to have 10 speed settings. We'll use the plus or minus on our push pad here. That's going to be our top speed. This fan might sound loud because I'm wearing a microphone, but this actually is a very, very quiet fan. We also are going to have an in and out, so it will vent, not only pull air in, but you can also out, where it will take air from inside and push it out. Now we're going to have a ceiling fan mode with this fan, or with this vent. What we're going to do is we're going to open our lid. We're going to turn our fan on where it's pulling air in. And then when we close our lid, that's going to turn ceiling fan mode. It's going to circulate air within the van. This is going to have a thermostat, which is right here. When set on auto, it's going to automatically turn your fan off and on to adjust the air inside the camper or inside the van. What's going to separate this one from some of the other ones is some of the other ones that are automatic, that you push a button and it opens the lid, they'll have a rain sensor on them. When it rains, those are closed. With this one, you don't need it. The reason is because it has a cover that covers the whole top side of it. It won't allow water to get inside. As far as our screen goes, another thing that's going to set this one apart is how easy these screens come off. Unlike your typical one, your normal ones that you'll find in your RVs or campers, they'll bolt up in the side or screw up in the side or have clips. You got to get a screwdriver or something, reach up in there and push the clips to get it down. With these, you turn these tabs out to the side. You'll have 4 of them, and your screen drops out. Very simple. As far as our thermostat sensor, you're going to see a little spot right here in the corner. This is going to be your sensor for your thermostat, or your temperature gauge for the interior. As far as how our fan gets power, just a simple 12-volt power and a ground wire. Very easy. This is what our vent looks like on top of our camper or on top of our van. You can see this is going to be a smoked finish cover. It's going to be made out of a durable plastic, so it's going to withstand all weather conditions. And you can see it's very low profile, so it fits very nicely on top of this van. Now this is in a closed position. This is what our vent's going to look like when it's open, or when our vent lid is open. If you look here, this is going to be a full screen. It's not going to allow any bugs or anything to get inside the van. Typically, those roof vents are designed for campers and RVs. However, a lot of individuals nowadays are turning the transit vans into campers. They're going to design them how they want to. So this is kind of going to be a custom job. A couple things you're going to need. You're going to need a couple different size pieces of plywood. They're going to be 24 inch by 24 inches. You're going to need some tape. This is just painter's tape. Measuring tape. You're going to need a bolt, a nut with a couple of flat washers, 9/32 drill bit, and maybe a couple that are bigger, or a 9/32 drill bit and a step bit if you have one. A couple other things you're going to need. I suggest a drop cloth to lay on the inside when you are cutting out your roof, the metal roof. And then obviously you're going to need some type of saw to cut your wood out. Now, I want to mention that depending on which van you have, the T150, the way this is designed to go is to touch the ribs on the inside of the van. If your ribs are closer together and you can get this where it's going to be touching your ribs, you can use the 1/2 inch. With the T150, the ribs are too far apart for our frame that we're putting inside, so We're not going to be touching either one of the ribs. We're going to center it in between, so we're going to be using the 3/4 inch plywood. So you don't necessarily need both 3/4 inch and the 1/2 inch. And we're going to need 2 aluminum strips that are 36 inches long by 1/2 inch wide. Our frame that we're going to be building for the inside, it's because our roof is metal. It's very thin metal. It's to give our not only our roof support, but our fan support. So when we bolt them together or screw them together, we know we're going to have a good strong hold. We have a good strong frame. We're not going to have to worry about our roof bending at all. To get our measurements on our roof, we're going to take our 1/4 inch piece of plywood. We want to make a 14 inch by 14 inch square. You can see how I have it marked here. If you're going to do it like this off the edge of the board, you want to make sure that you're squared, your board is squared. You can do that by measuring from side to side, this way and this way. And if you go corner to corner, make sure you're getting the same measurement both ways. Once you get your 14 by 14 square, you're going to put a mark in each corner. It's going to be 7/16 of an inch in. You can see here, 7/16 of an inch in from both lines. You're going to do that in all 4 corners. Then you're going to find your center, and you're going to put a mark there. We're going to cut this out. This is going to be our template to drill out 4 holes for our roof. So I'm going to go ahead and drill my hole in the center. Doesn't matter what size drill bit you use, because all this is going to be cut out on the roof. Just make sure whatever size you use, you have the bolt that's going to be going through this hole. Make sure it's going to fit in the hole. So just make sure you're using a drill bit big enough for that. We'll drill this out first. I'm going to set this in here. Get it lined up on my marks. Good there. Check here and here to make sure we're good. And we're going to drill through this hole, straight up through the roof. You can see where my mark is. Just like that. I'm going to go ahead and pull my tape off. Then we're going to take that bolt and we're going to drop it down through this hole. We'll take our template and we're going to bolt it right to our roof here. That's going to allow us, 1, to hold that template up, 2, so we can square it up to drill our 4 corner holes. Once you get your bolt through, go ahead and tighten that up. You want to center or make sure you're straight on both sides. What I suggest is if you get it off center a little bit where it's more to one side or the other, if you want to be a little bit picky, take your hole that's going through the board, just make it a little bit bigger. That way you can slide your board over, but your hole's still center. Once you're squared, go ahead and take your 9/32 drill bit. We're going to drill through our 4 corners up through the roof. I'm going to make a suggestion. That first hole that you drilled in that corner, go ahead and put another nut and bolt in there. So that when you're drilling the other ones, because this board's going to kind of move a little bit, this will keep it from shifting. This way you got your 4 corners the way it is on your board. You're not going to have one offset somewhere. So now we'll just repeat our process for drilling out our other 3 holes. Our 4 corners. So now I have my template up here on top. I put my bolts back in, my template on top to hold it square. Taking tape, and I'm taping out right along this edge. It's also going to protect my roof from the bottom of my saw so it doesn't get scratched. So we get these to touch one of the lines. Another thing you can do, take our jigsaw, we're going to cut this out. Tape the bottom of it. That's going to help keep from scratching it also. One thing that I didn't mention, don't stand on your roof because this metal is very thin. and you will dent it. When cutting this out, just take your time. We're going to run it right along our line here. Now that we've got it cut out, I'm going to go ahead and push it out. And we have our hole. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the top part of my fan, set it in place, and do a little test fit to see if there's any changes that I need to make. This is the base for the outside. My fan will sit on it, and then the fan top will actually get screwed to this. When we take that, we set it right down in place like that. Looks like we're okay. Now, for our frame on our inside, as I mentioned before, we want it to come all the way out to the outer edge of our corrugation. What we did is we took our 3/4 inch piece, and we did 18 by 18 square. Came in 2 inches on each side to give us our 14 by 14 square, which is our hole. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to cut this out, and then we're going to cut out this center, and that's going to give us our frame for the inside. Now, one of these two sides is going to sit on the corrugation that on the inside it's raised. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to take our 1/4 inch board, we're going to cut a piece that's going to fit right inside these two lines on two ends. That should fill that gap to give us a flat surface all the way across. That way we don't have a gap. Now we're going to do the same thing here because we need to cut out the center as we did on the roof. I'm going to drill a hole each corner. I can put my blade in, I can run it right to that corner along the line. So now with my frame for my inside, you can see how my corners are rounded. You don't have to do that. That's just something extra I did, because if it was mine, I would rather that frame match my inside piece rather than being square on the corners. I think it looks a little cleaner, makes it look a little more professional, in my opinion. Completely up to you. Now, what we're going to do is we need to get our shims to stick onto our frame. A couple different ways you can do it. If you have wood glue, you can glue them. What I'm going to do, because I got to get this whole frame to stick on the inside, I'm going to use some spray adhesive. I'm just going to spray this whole frame. I'll stick these on, let it sit for a couple minutes, and we'll take this and I'll stick it to the inside, and it'll stick up to the roof then. We'll let that tack up for a minute. We'll put another thin coat on, and we'll stick our shim boards on. Now, as far as our shims go, if I didn't mention it before, you don't want them any more or any longer than 14 inches, because they need to, remember, this edge is going to be on our corrugation that drops on the inside. Because our corrugation hangs down, we need to shim to make sure it's all flat. For my metal strips, you can see how I have this one cut. What this is going to do when we screw down, this is going to keep from cracking the plastic. We're going to do that same thing. We're going to run it all the way around. Doesn't really matter how it looks, because it's all going to get covered up with self-leveling sealant. But you just want to make sure that you pre-drill your holes so they match up with your top piece. So now we put our top piece back in place. You can see how our corrugation drops here. We're going to have to make shims for this. Same inch or 1/4 inch plywood. You can see it's going to fit pretty well in there. Once I take the tape off, we're going to have butyl tape on it also. So now we just need to cut it the width. So now what we need to do is we're going to use this top piece to pre-drill our holes through the roof. I'm going to use a 3/16 drill bit. We're going to use a clamp. Now clamp my frame right to the side here. It'll hold it up tight. Just make sure, if you're doing this, you don't make it so tight that you crack that outside flange. All we want to do is hold it in place while we drill our holes. So our wood frame that we just clamped to the inside. When we drill our holes out here, we're not going to drill all the way through our wood because we want our screws that we're going to be putting in to bite in there. So we're just using it to make this stiff. Since we cut this out, it makes the metal weak around it. We're making it stiff, so when we're putting a little bit of pressure on that drill bit, that metal is not going to warp like this and make our hole off center. So now we can go around and we can drill the rest of our holes. Again, all we're trying to do is get through the metal. Now we can remove our clamps. We can take our top base off and go ahead and add our butyl tape and our shims to the bottom of it. You'll notice that this piece has screw holes in it. These are going to be to each side. We're only going to be using butyl tape on the flange, on the front and back. On our sides, the butyl tape is going to go on the bottom side of our shim. So we'll just take this utility knife, cut it. And what we want is we want the tape not only to cover the holes, but to come out to the outside edge. Press that down. We'll do the same thing back here. Now you can see how I have my butyl tape on here. Gonna sit just like that. We'll do the same thing with this shim. Overlap it just a little bit. Once we start screwing it down and squishing this in there, this is actually going to start squishing out and we can cut off the excess. There we go. So you can see the difference. My butyl tape from the front and the back from my wood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a second piece on here so that I can bring my butyl tape to my wood level. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pick, if you have a small enough screwdriver, and we're going to hit the 3 holes on our butyl tape on each side. We're obviously not going to be able to do it with the shims, but once we get these 3 holes done, we can take our frame, we'll screw down these 3 holes on each side, and these holes should be lined up. We'll put our shims in, and we'll screw down those 2 sides. So we'll just take this, and we're going to run it right down through our butyl tape, like that. Peel off the paper on your butyl tape. I'm going to do one side at a time here with this. I'm just going to feed this through here, see if I can't get my hole lined up before I press it into place. There's one. I can always pull these back out because I'm not going into the frame yet because I haven't put that back in. So I'm going to make sure that we're getting straight here. I think we're looking good so far. Okay. Now I can put my other shim in. Now I've gone ahead and pushed butyl tape down. It's going to stick it where it is. I'll go ahead and back these screws out pretty carefully so we don't move that up there. You can see how far these stick down. Again, our frame is 3/4 inches thick. We want to try to get as much as we can into the wood, but we want to try not to come all the way through it, because then you got the tip of the screw sticking out. We're using 1.5" wood screws. Make sure they're stainless steel, because they are going to be, part of them are going to be outside. And we're going to put our metal trim pieces in place. Again, we're going to use these. First, you can see that I moved my clamps. I did that so you can better see what I'm doing here. We're using our metal trim so that when we screw our screw down, we can screw it down fairly tight and it's not going to crack the plastic because we're going on some metal. Now that we have all of our screws in, it's tightened down, we're going to take our utility knife and we're going to cut off all of our excess butyl tape that's hanging out. I will say be very careful doing this. You don't necessarily have to go all the way through the tape to the roof, because once you get most of the way through, you'll be able to start peeling that off. We'll just kind of score it. Like that. And you're going to do that all the way around. Now we're going to take our self-leveling sealer and we're going to go, I'm going to start right on this top edge here so that it falls down. We want to make sure that we cover our screws, and because this dips down here in our corrugation, we're going to use a little bit more than we normally would on top of a camper or RV. We just want to make sure we have good coverage over this so it doesn't leak. Let's start here. We're just going to go around the whole edge first. I'm going to run and beat it right over the top here, just like this. Now we'll run a bead on top here, right inside. Once you have all your self-leveling sealant on, you can go ahead and install your fan or your vent. The lip that was sticking up from what we just put our self-leveling sealant on needs to be on the inside. That flange needs to be on the inside of the base of our fan. There's going to be 4 metal pieces, clips on there that are going to line up with these holes. We're going to use our number 10 by 3/4 inch screws to go through there to hold our fan in place. We're going to have 4 of them, 2 on each side. Once you get those in, you can remove your plastic. One thing I do want to mention when installing this, you want to make sure that it opens to the back. The hinge part is towards the front. You want to make sure it does not open to the front where the wind will catch it. Now we're going to need to measure to cut this to fit around here. So how you do that is you're going to measure from here to the thickness of your roof. You can obviously see that that's pretty level. So this is going to slide up inside of there. So if you notice, if you can see this line here, what we're going to do is I'm just going to cut it right along that line. That'll give us enough to go up inside, and then we can screw it right to the wood. So all I did was measured 3/4 of an inch up and drew a line. I'm going to do that all the way around, all 4 sides. Once you get all your lines drawn out, I'm going to use a Dremel tool to cut it. You can score it with a utility knife a few times, and you can eventually get through it. It's, you know, fairly decent plastic. Once you get it cut, we're going to clean off all the burrs, and then we're going to test fit it to see if we need to make any other adjustments to it. You can see we're all the way up against our board here, so we're cut right. Now what we need to do is we need to run our wires, power and our ground. So what I'm going to do to have the least amount of wire coming out, is I'm going to run it along this edge. I'm going to come out right here. I'll have my power wire here, and I can ground it right here. Yeah, push it right like that. Just want to make sure you stay away from your screw holes, where your screws are going to be. Now we can screw that in place. Our hardware, flat Phillips head screw. It's going to have some white paint on it. Just kind of match your trim piece here. Now what we need to do is run our power on ground. We need to find a 12-volt power source so that we can turn the fan off and on without the key being in ignition. Where I ran it was, I ran it through this channel, I ran it through the rib, over top of this section here, or the vent here. I came down, went behind my airbag, across, right along the seam, down my A-pillar, went down behind the dash, you can take your glove box out, and I ran it right to my 12-volt plug or outlet. I'm not going to make this connection yet. When testing it, we tested that the green with the blue wire is going to be our hot wire. I'm going to make my connection in the back first before I connect this. I'm going to take my power wire. It's going to have a sticker on it. I'm going to run it right through this hole. Pull it out like this. Take my power wire that I have for my 12-volt lead. I'll get them spliced together with a butt connector, and then I can shove it up inside of this rib to where it's not hanging out. My ground wire, I'm going to cut it down. I'm just going to ground it right here. I do want to mention this power wire that we ran up to the 12-volt plug does not come with your fan. This is something you will have to pick up. Now we'll strip both of these back and we'll put on the butt connector. So the ring terminal also does not come in your kit, but you can find those here at eTrailer.com. Take a self-tapping screw, put it right into this channel. And make sure your self-tapping screw is on metal, not on any plastic. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some electrical tape around that. We'll stick it up in there, and I'll put a little bit right here just to give it a little bit cleaner look. And we'll go ahead and make our connection here at the front. Back to our plug. We'll get our pin put back in place. Now we can test out our fan, make sure it's working without our key in the ignition. That'll do it for a look at an installation on the MaxxFan Deluxe Roof Vent with 12-volt fan and thermostat on our 2017 Ford Transit T150.